White text on a black background reads Thriving with Vision Loss with founder Gale Pollock. The eleVIVO logo appears in the bottom right corner. This is a Zoom-style interview alternating between gallery and individual speaker view. Michelle is on the left, seated in a black chair against a wood slat background with brown hair, wearing a purple collared shirt and purple headband. Gale is on the right against a burnt sienna background with an abstract globe and rectangle artwork. She has reddish-brown hair and gold hoop earrings and a red, sleeveless, silky shirt.
Sometimes change begins with a single question, a question asked in a congressional hearing that no one in the room was prepared to answer. Today's conversation is about what happens when a leader encounters a reality that no longer can be ignored, how one moment gave the next chapter of a life's work its direction. This is Thriving with Vision Loss, an eleVIVO original series sharing real stories, practical tools, and lived wisdom from people navigating blindness and low vision and from those who walk alongside them. eleVIVO supports individuals and families navigating vision loss and is built to scale with agencies, nonprofits, and healthcare organizations that serve them. I want to tell you something about today's guest before I say her title. Gale Pollock is my boss. But for years, when she was in the saddle, I was hers. I traveled to teach her for 2 years. My job was to keep her safe. That's where our friendship was forged, in a relationship where we took turns being in charge. Teaching ended for reasons beyond our control, but she's still riding. I'm not teaching anymore, but the friendship became the foundation for everything that followed. In 2018, she asked if I could help with some research. That's when eleVIVO entered my life, and that conversation changed everything for both of us. She spent her career inside the machinery of the military medicine, and then something she couldn't unhear gave the next chapter of her life its direction. Not because it changed her, but because it was exactly the kind of problem she'd never been able to walk past. She's a retired Major General. She was commander of the U.S. Army Medical Command, 22nd Chief of the Army Nurse Corps, and the Acting Surgeon General of the Army. Gale does not live with vision loss herself, but what she witnessed during her service is what brought her here. Gale, it's so wonderful to have you with us today. I've been really looking forward to this.
Thanks very much. I appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Before we talk about programs or leadership decisions, I want to go back to a specific room. You were present during congressional testimony when Senator Daniel Inouye asked a question that stopped everyone cold. Can you take us there? Not the policy version, just what you remember as a person sitting in that room.
Sure, because it's one of those things I'll never forget, because it definitely, as you've already said, changed the direction of my life after my service in the military. I had just been nominated to be the first nurse 2-star, and I knew that as a result, I would have to go down and do congressional testimony. I'd never seen it, so I wanted to go down and see it before I was in the hot seat. So I put on civilian clothes so the media wouldn't ask me questions about what was being presented that day. And after the 3 physicians finished, because it was still early in the global war on terror, and the majority of injuries were from gunshot. And we were really good at saving people from gunshot. So when they finished and, kind of beating their chests, we're doing really well. We're really proud of how well we're doing. Senator Inouye said, "But what about the blinded troopers?" And the docs looked at each other and kind of rolled their eyes, shook their heads, and said, "That's not a problem." And Senator Inouye recoiled like they had slapped him in the face. And when he sat back forward, he went, "Oh, really?"
Oh.
And my nursing antenna went crazy. What did this man, who received a Medal of Honor, so he understood the evil of the battlefield, he lost the use of his arm in World War II. And in the hundreds of days that he spent with other wounded troopers, as he called them then, he had seen all kinds of injuries that others had suffered. So what did he know that we had either failed to recognize or overlooked?
So when you got back, you asked your team to pull the numbers. What did you find?
Well, I found that I had to learn how to ask data the correct question, because I went back and said, "Tell me how many blind troopers we have." And they came back and said, "We don't have any." And I'm like, I'm not believing this, because between when Senator Inouye had asked and the time that I was promoted and I could task the staff to do research for me, they had started using the improvised explosive devices.
Oh.
And so I went, wait a minute. You're sitting there with the guts to tell me that these devices that rip off arms and legs, rip off our helmets, rip off our goggles, don't affect our eyes? I disagree. Look again. So they looked again and they didn't find anything. Well, my husband's a data guy, so I came home and complained to him. And he said, well, you're still not asking the right question. If you know the answers in the data, ask the right question. And I was like, well, of course it's my fault because I'm asking the wrong question. They're not looking the right stuff up. So I went up to 50,000 feet and I said, any eye injury in Iraq or Afghanistan since 9/11. Boom. That's when we discovered that 10 to 13% of all combat injuries involve the eye. It could be something as simple as a cut eyelid. It could be as severe as removal of one or both eyes. And I was like, oh my goodness.
Wow.
We got a problem here. Houston, we have a problem.
Uh-huh.
And that started my path to address the needs of this population.
So then you moved on, you saw the suicide risk data. When you saw the suicide risk data, how did that feel to you? What was that like?
It felt horrible. So I started talking with providers and our troops that had been injured and their families, and the depression and the frustration and the withdrawal from community was profound. And I was like, people that are like this commit suicide. So there's a good reason to get after the needs of this population. But then I started working with the VA to see, we have all the suicide data that the VA has. Let's figure this out. And when the VA staff looked it up for me, they showed me that if you're visually impaired, you're 10 times more likely than any other disabled category to commit suicide. I was like, holy Moses.
That's so surprising. Did it surprise you or did you already suspect that?
I expected it. I just didn't think that it would be that high. I expected it would be burns, the men and women who had been severely third-degree burned, because we look really unusual after we've been burned. Our body doesn't heal with nice, smooth, unblemished skin. Or amputees. We were looking at 2 and 3 and 4 limb amputees. Certainly, they've got to be depressed. But to find out that vision loss was one of the top 10 disabilities, was 10 times more likely to induce suicide because people don't know what to do. And it makes so much sense to me as a military leader, because the last thing any of us want to do is be a burden on somebody. We learn to carry our own stuff, and if our friend needs it, we carry them too. We don't want to be the carried one.
Yeah.
Which is why somebody will say, oh, leave me, leave me. No, that's not what we do. But, these men and women, they don't want to be a burden on their families. They don't want to be a burden on society. And unfortunately, as military people, we're pretty well trained in how to execute a plan. And I don't know if you're interested in this, but it might be something that's important for the people that we're presenting to. There are 3 questions that you have to ask someone if you're worried about their potential for suicide. The first question you ask is, are you thinking about hurting yourself? If they say yes, you say, do you have a plan? If they say yes, you say, have you done anything to implement that plan? If they say yes, you don't leave them. You accompany them to get the emotional support and the care that they need.
That's so important and so powerful.
And because this population is still 80% of the visually impaired are chronically depressed, this is an issue that all of us have to be comfortable asking those 3 questions and just practice them, because they're not hard questions to ask. Are you thinking about hurting yourself? That's no big words. It's not hard to say. Have you done anything to implement your plan? Do you have a plan? Have you done anything to implement your plan? 3 questions. It's not rocket science, but it could save a life. And as we talked about it this morning, I felt like it was really important to share that.
That's really important. You're right. And so at some point, this stopped being a data problem for you, and it started feeling like your personal responsibility.
Oh, yeah.
When did that shift happen?
Oh, immediately, because I knew that once I'd been promoted, I was in my last 4 years of military service. And I had spent, since I was 17 years old when I joined the Army, I'd spent all that time ensuring that America's military, sons or daughters, sisters, brothers, however you want to categorize them, that they went home to their families in the best possible shape. We couldn't save everybody, but it was my intent to provide a safe return for people, even if they were injured, regardless. And I was already thinking, what am I going to do? This has been my passion all my life. And it was very clear to me that I had a new mission. And I have been retired now for longer than I'd like to say. And that hasn't changed. I still wake up going, Gale, if you don't hurry up and figure this out, other people are going to die. Get your butt in gear.
And I understand completely because that mission's become mine too. So why do you think that this population stayed under the radar? Why do you think that people don't notice and don't understand?
Well, they don't notice because they don't see them. Many people with vision loss stop leaving their homes, their apartments, their rooms, wherever they happen to be living, because they don't want to be vulnerable outside. If you're looking weak, you become the prey. So they don't want to go out. They don't want to admit to people that they're struggling. They don't want to be a burden. So they withdraw more and more. So they're not out of their house, so we don't see them. But if you talk to people who know people who are over 50 years old, in a group, if you're talking to 30 or 40 people, if you ask the question, do any of you know someone who's struggling with vision loss, changes in their vision? About half the room is going to say yes. Because historically, it's been a disease of aging. Regardless of the causes, it's waited until later in our life.
So,
But that's changing too. And maybe you'll ask me about that later.
yes. So from where you sat overseeing Army medicine, you could see the whole arc of a person's care. Where were people succeeding medically, but they're still falling through the cracks? How did that happen?
They started to fall through the cracks more after they left. Because on active duty, we weren't putting people out if they had a wartime injury. If you wanted to stay and we could find you a job, you stayed. So we had a number of men who had both eyes removed that were still on active duty and still kicking butt and serving the country. I have one friend who was an operations guy, which means he planned things. And they sent him down to special ops because special ops said, we work in the dark. He lives in the dark. He totally understands what we're trying to do. So here's a man that most people on the street would say, oh, you can't do anything. You're blind. And he was teaching the special ops how to think through those environments.
Wow. That's really powerful.
So, when you're in the military, you have these opportunities because we provide them for you because we want you to know that we value your sacrifice. We value your loss. But in the civilian world, because people don't talk about it, they don't get the same kind of opportunity. If there is still way too much, well, if your eyes don't work, it means your brain's dead, which is the biggest. I'm pausing to think of a nice way to say this. Pile of garbage I've ever heard, because it's not your brain, it's your eyes or your optic nerve. Your brain is there. Your brain still works, even if your eyes aren't doing what they did in the past. But because we treat you like you're stupid in the civilian world, We don't give you good opportunities. We don't challenge you. We don't think, I bet if we did training, I bet this person could do this because they're a highly motivated person. They want to show what they can do, but we don't offer them those opportunities. And so once they're in the civilian world, they fall through the cracks because they stay home, they get depressed, they start drinking, So when you take depression and substance abuse together, whether you're a former military person or a civilian, you mix those poisons together and you're much more prone to commit suicide or at least attempt suicide. And unfortunately, the more you think about it, the more likely you are to have thought about it, to have a plan, and to successfully execute that plan.
And that's not good.
And it's a unnecessary loss of human life.
At some point, you realized the gap that you were seeing wasn't unique to the military. Macular degeneration, glaucoma, diabetic retinopathy, younger people, civilians with no roadmap, no support system. When did it click? And what did the civilian landscape look like when you started paying attention to it?
Okay, that's a great question. I'm a nurse, so I'm curious. So I've got all, these men and women, they're losing sight, and I'm worried about that. So then I think, well, what else can cause vision loss? Is it only trauma? And then I started learning about macular degeneration and glaucoma and diabetic retinopathy. And I learned that the Center for Disease Control, back in about 2010, identified vision loss as one of the top 10 disabilities in the country. But because they withdraw into their homes, the average human being doesn't know. So I, started looking. Well, a couple of those are really more age related. Some of them are genetic, so they'll happen a little earlier. But then as I started to look at the problems that America is having with obesity, and this may seem like a ramble, but I'm going to try and pull it together here. When you're obese, you get diabetes. When you get diabetes, you get other cardiovascular diseases, you get eye disease. So not only are you dealing with renal failure and high blood pressure and the potential loss of your leg because your blood system in your legs is poor, you also lose sight. You get diabetic retinopathy. So, if it was only really old people that got diabetes, wouldn't be a problem. But now, because of obesity, we have children that are 5 or 6 or 7 who are getting a diabetic-related diabetes from obesity. And since it only takes about 15 years of your body fighting with diabetes before you have vision changes, before you develop diabetic retinopathy, they're going to be losing their sight when they're 20 or 21 or 22. Just when they should be graduating from high school or technical school or college and entering the workforce and being parts of our community and our human potential for the future. And then I was like, holy Moses, this is a way bigger challenge than just trauma. And I can't let this go.
So how did that change the scope of what you knew needed to be built? What were you thinking about, and what did their lives look like?
Their lives looked pretty unhappy because they don't understand the language that what I call the disease care system uses. They didn't know where to get help. They didn't know what questions to ask. They didn't understand what people were telling them. So I was like, okay, Gale, you've been a curator, a translator, all of your life as a nurse. People would sit down and they listen to the doc and then they look at you and go, what did he say? So I was like, okay, I need to start doing this. And I need to think about it as if I was your nurse and I was sitting down with you and you just found out that you have vision loss or that your vision is going to get worse and you're scared to death. That's normal. But from my perspective, if my responsibility as a professional nurse is to raise you to your highest quality of life, despite disease or disability, I got work to do. So I need to find out what's most important to you. Is it managing inside your household? Is it being the income maker for your family? Is it knowing how you're going to get to work or get to the grocery store? Is it transportation? Is it knowing how to find the different professionals that could help you? Is it finding other people who struggle with the same things that you do? So you recognize you're not alone. And that's how eleVIVO all started to come together, because I knew that if I couldn't sit with you one-on-one, I had to have all those different, what I'll call buckets of information available. So you could go into them and say, okay, yeah, I'm a stay-at-home grandma, but I take care of my grandkids and I need to cook for them and I need to do laundry and I want to have dinner ready when my kids and my husband come home. You got a lot of things you got to learn how to do inside the house with a change in your vision. So we're going to teach you how to do those things. Where we try to make it very understandable for an individual. And then we tell you how close those resources are to your house. So you know that, oh, gee, there's a place that's 4 miles away that could help me. And we give you their phone number and their address and their website address so that you can start to take little steps, knowing that each of those steps may be a little scary because you're trying to do something new and you're really scared anyhow, but you're going to try because it's a little step. And my hope for each of those men and women that are struggling is that one of those positive steps forward will give you the courage to take the next one, and then the next one. And then you start to say to people, hey, I've got some changes in my eyes. Would you help me do X? That doesn't mean you're dependent, but you're willing to ask to make your life a little bit easier. And if they can't do it, they're going to say no. But the majority of people are going to say, sure. And is there anything else I can do? But we have to break that stigma that we can't ask for help. And I think that's true, not just in my former military population, but I think that pride's an issue in the civilian population too.
Yep, I think you're absolutely right. And the other part of it is it's all part of eleVIVO is all about taking back control
Yeah.
in your life, being able to do something
Yeah.
that'll make your life better.
And I think it's important to bring to people's attention that we can help too much
Mm-hmm.
because you can take over someone's life by doing everything for them.
Mm-hmm.
But that doesn't make them feel any better. That doesn't make them willing to try new things or go to new places. That just helps them to stay depressed.
Mm-hmm.
So don't be a control freak. Ask them what they want to learn about. Help them learn that. Don't do it for them. Help them learn it.
You're right. So to kind of shift a little bit, you were carrying really some heavy stuff when you started eleVIVO, not just professionally, but personally, coming out of the military and seeing this problem and starting on a new path. Your faith is a real big part of who you are and how you move through the world. How did it shape the way you responded to what you were learning?
That's why I knew, because I've always had a close relationship with God since I was in college and went through a hard time and decided that since I was at the bottom, I'd give God a chance, and he's never let me down. And so I had been saying to him, this is my last period of time in the military. What am I going to do? How am I going to serve? How can I contribute and be grateful for your grace? And he said, we're going to work with the visually impaired. So I've never doubted that I was called to do this mission. And on the days that I'm particularly frustrated, I sit down and I actually write my letters every day to God. I don't pray out loud because it's too easy for my spinny brain to get distracted. So I actually type my prayer every day. And on the days that I'm struggling about how to do this or where we're going to get the money or who's going to use our resources or why does it really matter, I just write it down. And then I feel like I've given that headache back to God. And I say, I can't, I'm just a little human being that's, screws up all the time. I'm a sinner. I don't do things correctly all the time. Will you help me? And he always does.
And that seems to really carry you when the answers don't come fast enough. Because you're like me, we want the answers right now.
Oh, I want the answer yesterday. I want the
Yeah.
answer before I ask the question.
Yes, you're right. As your XO, I can attest to that. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Mhm.
So, when you looked at everything that you saw with the gaps and the people falling through and the families, you came up with eleVIVO to exist when things just didn't exist. What was the first problem you wanted to solve?
Well, I first started thinking about, well, what are we offering the people who have totally lost their vision? I was thinking about the men and women who lost both eyes, who see nothing.
Mhm,
I thought, well, we tell them to learn Braille. Well, that doesn't work because only 10% of adults learn a foreign language, and Braille's a foreign language. So that might help 10% of them, but what about the other 90%?
mhm,
We tell them they should get a guide dog for when they're outside.
mhm,
Well, there are hundreds of thousands of people who could use a guide dog because of vision issues. And there's only about 10,000 dogs out there. So the waiting lists are years long. So
mhm,
that doesn't work. But when I first was confronted with this, we didn't have a lot of technology. So now it's getting really exciting
mhm,
because the different phone companies, the Apples, the Android organizations, they're looking at how do we make this tool accessible.
mhm,
There are more, there's more technology. And although when I started doing this, if you had low vision, you could get a screen reader that was like the size of your TV and put a page under it and have it read it to you. But it forces you to be stationary. Most of us don't like sitting still all day. We want to at least wiggle around, move around our house, move around the workplace. Now we can pick up our phones and we can say,
mhm,
be my eyes. Well, you use the video on your phone and you can go to the closet and go, I can't find my can of white beans. I have the tuna, but I need the white beans to fix my lunch.
mhm.
And a volunteer will connect with you and say, oh, it's on the shelf, chest high on the right-hand side. Reach for it and I'll tell you if you have it. Nope. Go one more right. And they'll help you. And then now you're able to fix your lunch.
Scotty, our tech tester,
Mm-hmm.
he's hilarious. He actually plays video games with a Be My Eyes volunteer with his meta glasses.
Oh my goodness.
And
Okay.
they'll sit with him for an hour and
Yeah.
play
So
and play
yeah,
video games.
there's creative ways out here
Yeah.
now. People are starting to really use technology, and everybody's talking these days about AI. Will AI help? Eventually, but AI is still very young.
Mhm,
And as it matures, I think it will have some ways it can contribute to our visually impaired community. But right now, I'm still in the wait out mode.
mhm. Yep, I understand that completely. So what do people misunderstand the most about vision loss if they haven't lived near it?
I think that people don't understand that vision is a continuum. So I'll describe it as you have zero vision. You don't have any eyes, or you don't even see daylight. You can't see light changes. So your world is just dark. So that's a zero. Then it slides all the way up to a 10. And I would tell you that a football quarterback is like a 10 plus
Hmm.
because he sees things faster than the rest of us can, which is why he gets the ball to the person that's going to be in the place.
Hmm.
So then you have from 0 to 10. And most of us in life start out around 8 or 9. If we're, an 8 or 9, we might have surgery if we're in a first world country. We have the luxury of a number of different surgeries, or we'll get glasses, and that'll push us up closer to a 9. And when we start to struggle and we kind of get below an 8, we're just not seeing clearly anymore. We can go to a doc, an ophthalmologist, which is the eye specialist, the physician eye specialist who cares for people with eye disease. And he or she may say to us, you have an eye disease that will gradually decrease your vision, which means you're going to slide somewhere between your 7.5 and 8, closer to 0. And people are terrified. But the issue is you're not going to lose all of your sight. The majority of people with vision loss don't lose all their sight. They learn enough, they lose enough that day-to-day activities become much more challenging. But that's one of the ways that eleVIVO steps in, because we show you ways to accommodate that. We show you how to cope with that. We connect you with people that are already dealing with it so they can tell you how they've been successful. And I think that either or, you're either sighted or you're blind is one of the problems. So people think that, oh, if I have vision changes, I'm suddenly put in this blind bucket and people treat me like I'm stupid. And that contributes to why they don't come out and try and learn things, because they don't want you to treat them like they're stupid. They're not stupid. I don't know how many times I'm going to have to get up in front of a group of people and say, it's not their brain, it's their freaking eyes. And stop treating them like they're stupid. You wouldn't want somebody to treat you like you're stupid, so stop doing it to them. And I will keep beating on that because that just makes me twitch.
Same. Same. I get kind of hostile. So where are you seeing genuine progress in low vision and blind treatment, but also what still concerns you?
What concerns me is that the devices and rehabilitation care that some people need is not paid for by the disease care system. And if you're not working, you don't have a lot of free cash to make it happen. And that's why the not-for-profits in this space, in the low vision space, are so important, because they can provide the services. They can teach people how to do it. But because of the information that we have for eleVIVO, we know that, for example, if you live in Montana or Wyoming, you might have to drive 8 hours to get to one of these places that will do it. Let me see, you can't drive anymore because of your vision changes. Your family is not a millionaire family. They can't afford to take time off from work. They can't afford the gas, the hotels, the foods to get you there, to come home, to go back and get you. So you don't bother to get the training. So I think that one of the most important things we're going to do in the future to help this growing population is to make sure that we have those training tools available online. And that's one of the places I'd really like to see eleVIVO grow to. We already have it in 2 languages. It's in English and Spanish. I already have plans for it to be in about 7 others, but I need it to be a more utilized tool to justify the expense of making the transition. And it's not that people don't matter, it's just that I don't have the money to make the change now. And if you can't go to a course, I want to be able to sit there. So you're seeing me, the retired general, saying, this will never be as good as a one-on-one instruction by a professional who teaches this every day. But if I can teach you 80% by having you listen and watch and have a friend or your family member sit with you and watch so they can help you make the little adjustments in what you're trying to do, we're going to give you an 80% solution. And to me, an 80% solution is a whole hell of a lot better than a 0% solution, because I can't go to your training. So will it be perfect? No. If you want perfect, you're going to have to figure out how to get to a not-for-profit. But that's not doable for a lot of the visually impaired population. And I want to make sure, again, that essence of me as a nurse, I want to lift you to your highest quality of life despite disease or disability. That's why we need the online teaching.
Yep. So you spent most of your life in structured leadership roles where everything has a mission, everything has a metric. Has this work changed how you understand care and service personally? And how does it affect eleVIVO?
No, it hasn't affected my definition or my expectations of me.
Mhm.
It has caused me to be very disappointed in other people who say that they'll do things and then they don't. In the Army, we didn't lie to each other, because if I gave you wrong information on purpose, or even because I was just being freaking lazy, someone could lose their life because of it. And we all knew that. So it was very, very unusual for someone to lie to you in the military.
Mhm.
In the civilian world, there seems to be no accountability for misbehavior. And I've been stunned at how many people would look me in the eye and tell me a frank lie.
Mhm.
And then when I call them on it, they go, "Oh, well, I didn't say that." I'm like, "Oh, you're so full of shit." Excuse me.
Yep. It's okay. It's all good.
So it's been disappointing to see that so many people are so self-centered,
Mhm.
because it's not about us. It's not about our pride. It's not about what we're capable of doing. It's how do we reach someone else? How do we help someone else? How do we exhibit kindness and compassion? And I'm still looking for more people to get that concept,
Mhm.
because they'll be the ones that help to change the paradigm for the visually impaired. Because I believe that every single person, every human being deserves an opportunity to show what they can do. We can't all do the same thing, but we all have things that we can do. And I want us to be able to demonstrate that to others.
So, is there a person or a moment that you still carry with you?
There's a gentleman from the Army who lost one eye in Iraq. They brought him back back to the US thinking they could save his other eye, but they couldn't. He also had his leg broken in a couple of places, a break in his pelvis, a blown up side of his neck, and a lot of injuries. But the Navy nurse who was taking care of him was a colleague of mine and called me and said, "Hey, Gail, I got one of your blinded troopers over here. Would you come visit?" I said, "Sure." So I was the deputy surgeon general at the time, and I bopped over to Bethesda, which was at that point in time a Navy hospital, and came in and I said, "Okay, well, what's going on?" He goes, "Well, you got 4 Army guys up here, and you know," I'm like, "Okay, I'll come see all of them." I saved the visually impaired one for last, and when I got to the door, there was a sign that said vision challenges. I was like, "Well, what the hell does that mean?" So I knocked on the door and I got a really flat yes. I was like, "Oh dear. Oh dear." This guy sounded like he was a deflating balloon. He was just letting all his energy and life out. And I said, "Hey, I'm Gail. I'm a nurse. May I visit?" And he said, "Yeah, come on in." So I came in and, I can see. So I see his leg and his hip and his neck and the fact that his body's a wreck. And I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And he said, "I'm blind." I'm like, "Oh, anything else?" "No, I'm blind." So I was like, I got to figure out a way to fill up this guy's balloon. And I said, "Well, what'd you do in the Army? Why are you in the Army?" And he said, "Oh, I always wanted to be in the Army. And I always wanted to be a Ranger." I was like, "Oh, tell me about that." So he started talking about why he wanted to be in the Army and why he wanted to be a Ranger and what he'd done as a Ranger. And I could see him filling back up, because he was really proud of those things that he had done and what he had learned to do. And so I let him talk on for a while. And then I said to him, "I think you're lying to me." And he turned and he looked at me. I said, "Because you're a quitter and Rangers aren't quitters." And he props himself up in the bed and he shouts at me, "I said I'm blind. And I said you're a quitter. So don't tell another human being that you're a Ranger, because you're a quitter. So you're an embarrassment to anybody who was, is, or ever will be a Ranger." And I said, "Don't you know about the other blind guys that are in the Army?" No, and I had to give him a way out. But I had to slap him to get his attention, but I had to give him a way out. And he said, no. I said, has Scotty been to see you? Scotty was the first guy blinded. He's working as an EA for the 3-star general at down in Richmond. He's like, I didn't know about that. I thought you'd throw me out of the army. I said, you want to stay in the army? You want to be a ranger? And he said, yeah. I said, and he was like, yeah. I said, well, then focus on getting well, dude. You got more than just your eyeballs wrong with you. We'll help you with all of those injuries, but you got to want to get well.
Mhm.
And I said, here's my card. You have any questions? Call me. So I get a phone call that night from his wife. Hi, who are you? She says to me. I said, Gale Pollock, Army nurse. I didn't say, general. I just said Gale Pollock, Army nurse. And she goes, what did you say to my husband today? And I said, well, that's really none of your business. If he wants to tell you, he can tell you. But that's between nurse and her patient. Why? And she said, because today's the first day my husband's been here. What did you say to him? I said, like I said, none of your business. Ask him. Ask him. But if you have any questions, if the system doesn't make sense to you, you need help, you call me day or night. And she's like, okay. And he recovered from all those injuries and he went back. Remember that
Really?
guy that I told you that worked down in special ops that was
Yeah.
blind? That's him.
Yeah.
That's him.
Oh, wow. So you can do anything you choose to do.
Yeah, people just have to decide that it's important,
Mhm.
and thank
That's
goodness I'm not visually impaired. I know a bunch of people who are.
Mhm.
I know that there's a whole lot more people I don't know who are. But I want each one of you to fight to learn the next thing, to know that every time you learn something, it makes it easier to learn the next thing. And I don't care what language you speak, how much education you have, what your flavor or color is. Just do the next right thing and life gets so much better. So just don't quit on me. Just don't quit on me. You have questions, reach out to eleVIVO. Because if we don't know the answers, we're gonna freaking find them out.
And see, everyone, this is why I'm honored to work with this person because she is the most passionate person I know, and she is really the real deal. So now, Gail, now comes the fun part. When you step
Uh-oh.
away, when you're hiking, when you're birding, when you're out on horseback, what does that do for you?
It totally takes me away from the work and the stress. Because I'm not going to pretend that this is stress-free work. When I feel like I'm assuming responsibility to help care for millions of people around the world with vision issues, that's a big damn rock to put in your rucksack. And I can't carry it all the time. So I put it down during prayer. So that's a little break. And then when I'm out hiking with my husband and we're birding, I'm focused on staying safe when I hike because it's rocky and treacherous out there and there's rattlesnakes where we live. And looking for the birds. I'm the one that finds the birds because I see the movement and then Doug figures out which ones they are. Or I'm walking my dog and talking to him, or I'm riding my horse. And when I'm on the horse, I can't think about anything else. I have to think about me and Rio and how we're talking together because I'm one of those real weirdos that thinks you can talk to animals.
Mhm. Well, you can, and they talk back, and sometimes they swear.
Yeah, I know. I know. They can also tell you how stupid you are when you're trying to do something. But you can't think about anything else. I can't think about anything else when I'm in a saddle because I know that if I'm distracted, then he gets distracted. So I don't know what he's doing, and then I'm going to get hurt. So I can't. So those things, they allow me the break from what I'm doing. Because a lot of times when I wake up in the morning, I'm still thinking, because you haven't reached all the people that need to be reached. Who's suffering right now because you're moving too damn slow?
Mhm. Yeah,
So
That's what gets me up every morning. That's why we're battle buddies.
And I'm glad to have you.
So if someone's watching today and is early in their vision loss journey, or they love someone that is, and everything feels so uncertain and so overwhelming right now, what would you want them to know?
First, that they're not alone. And B, if you can't find the answer to your questions on eleVIVO, email address on it that says ask questions. Down at the bottom, you can ask Michelle or me questions. And if we think, oh, you just didn't understand the language that we used, and here's the answer. But if we go, whoa, they're right, we haven't touched this, then we'll do the research and we'll get the information for you.
Yep.
So there's no reason why you shouldn't push, you shouldn't ask questions, because we're going to be here for you.
Sounds great. So, Gale, thank you so much for joining us and for all the work that's brought us both here. Thank you for joining this episode of Thriving with Vision Loss. If this conversation resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share so more people navigating vision loss can find practical guidance and real community. Until next time, keep thriving and have the best day ever.
Thanks for tuning in to our series, Thriving with Vision Loss. If you'd like to learn more about thriving with blindness or low vision, check out eleVIVO.com/#/free trial for a free 6-month membership for the first 1,000 people who sign up. If you'd like to be featured in an upcoming episode in our Thriving with Vision Loss series, email Michelle B at eleVIVO.com. That is MICHELLEB at eleVIVO.com. The white letters on the black background fade as Circles by Classless Act plays.
Put down your weapon, make your way to happy, nay, yeah.